Texas recruiting hosted their coolest event of the summer. The barbecue poolside bash brought in important names and gave us a little more insight to this wild recruiting cycle. And Derrick Brown just committed. Justin Wells from Inside Texas is stopping by to break down the event since he saw it with his own eyes. Make sure to go sign up over at Inside Texas. Top-notch content and a must-have for the season. Make sure to swing by Last Stand Hats to pick up your new hat for the new season. Use promo code TexasHomer, all caps, on laststandhats.com for 10% off your hat purchase. Now let's get the scoop on the latest recruiting. Without further ado, let's get into it. Justin, thank you for coming back on, brother, and let the viewers know where to find you.
Hey, everyone. It's Justin Wells with Inside Texas. I'm absolutely happy here to join my man, Texas Homer, talk a little recruiting in the class of 2022.
And that we will. So first things first, Derrick Brown just committed, and it's a nice grab. What does he provide to the team?
This is actually big for Texas because Derrick Brown stands about 6'4", 210 pounds, 215 pounds. He's a really good athlete, multi-sport guy, really excelled on the basketball court as well. You like that athleticism, how it translates on the football field. He was a big fan of Coach PK, of Coach Jeff Choate, Chris Gilbert, the high school relations coordinator for Texas. They built a really good bond there with Derrick early on. Oklahoma came at him hard. His best friend and former teammate at Texas High signed with OU last year, Clayton Smith. Baylor was another one that really came in hard and made this one interesting. Texas A&M really liked him. They offered him early and were in pursuit as well. But at the end of the day, Derrick, just like he told me, he felt like Texas was home. He felt like the players made him feel like that's where he belonged, like that he was family. And for Derrick, that was a big selling point because him and I had talked about this over the last few years. I've known Derrick for a while. You know, relationships are the biggest key to this kind of business. And you got to remember, you know, you're not just committing to the coach or the staff, you're committing to the program and those other players that are there. And I think Derrick found the right fit. I think he knew it was Texas after his first official visit in June, but he was still on the edge a little bit. I think he even tilted towards Baylor probably up until about 2 weeks ago. And then Texas came back at him. They said, get back to campus. We want to see you again. He brought his family. He brought his coach, AJ Jordan, with him, his defensive coach. And I think Sark and those guys closed him yesterday and nailed down one of the best edge rushers in the state of Texas and a guy that I think in PK's system could flourish down the road.
Yeah, so do I. And you were at the barbecue event. So how was the atmosphere? Did the kids have fun?
You know, I think it was really well put together. I asked a couple kids that had been on campus in June, you know, what was the comparison like then to now, you know, basically a month and a half in between. They said this one was a lot more laid back. And I felt like that was probably true with June with a lot of schools because there was just so much cramming in, so much information, so many places in so little time. You hadn't been on campus in 2 years. And so I felt like this event was a lot more laid back. There wasn't that kind of, hustle and bustle to it. It was everybody enjoying themselves. And a pool party it can be as cool as the people that are there. And when you've got Bryce Anderson singing Travis Scott over the microphone, when you've got Cole Hudson winning the wing competition, I mean, that if you've ever seen that guy, that's a giant glass of water, man. Cole Hudson's going to be a big time get on the University of Texas campus. And then, at the end of the day, you had some big time players on campus, namely Devon Campbell, the nation's number one offensive guard. I kind of had an idea that he could possibly show up this weekend only because when I reached out last week, he didn't respond, and he usually does. So I think he was trying to bring the element of surprise, and often in recruiting, that's hard to do, especially with the media and people that cover it so closely. But he did it. He kept it quiet. He came in with a big smile and a big surprise. The staff was ecstatic, and once again, Texas is doing a great job with him. I know his timeline is still further down. He's really in no hurry to make a call, and he's going to take a visit to Texas this fall to catch a game. But right now, Texas is still setting the pace. They're the school that he has been to more double more than any other campus he's seen. And OU is really their only prime competition when it comes to that. And when you're dealing with Bill Bedenbaugh and those guys, that's that's going to be a tough head to head. But Devon is giving all the signals that Texas is the school. We've pretty much reported that as much throughout the spring, but we also understand in this cycle it's a little crazy and things can change on a dime, like a Jeremy Patton, choosing 3 schools in 4 days. Things can flip on a dime. Campbell's been the consistent. He's been the guy that really likes UT. He's built a great relationship with Kyle Flood and Steve Sarkisian. Jeff Banks goes in there and does his part as well. And so getting him back on campus was big. He was happy. He enjoyed himself. He was decked out in burnt orange. Devon Campbell is a major priority. He is the number 1 offensive line priority without question. And so getting him back in was big. Getting Bryce Anderson back on campus was big. He's at Texas A&M on the 31st, which would be today. And so getting him back on campus, former commit Jalen Gilbo actually showed up with Bryce as well. They're close. They tell us that they're a package deal. I really don't know how that benefits Texas because I'm not real sure which direction outside of Bryce where they want to go. But it was pretty well. The kids were happy. One guy that I think was pleasantly surprised is 4-star Quincy Wiggins. He's out of Madison Prep down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. 6'6", 271 pounds. I mean, a bowl full of beautiful. This guy was great. And when I got to catch up with him afterwards, he said, Texas was in his top 5 before he even visited Austin, which meant. And he told us he built great relationships with Bo Davis and Coach Kwiatkowski and those guys. And to get him on campus, his first words were, "This exceeded everything." It really opened his eyes. And the question we asked a lot of kids was, what was the SEC? Was there an SEC type sales pitch? Now that the SEC looks more and more, tangible, was that a sales pitch? Most of the kids said no. They said they may have mentioned it a few times, but overall, it really wasn't that much of a selling point for them. It was more the program, the people, the atmosphere, and the opportunity, which is really what you do want to sell. You don't want to sit there and start screaming SEC like most of those other dudes do for conference foes. Wiggins is going to come back for an official visit. He loved it. He said Texas is probably in his top 3 now. I think it's going to be tough to pull him out of LSU. I mean, nobody keeps in-state talents in-state better than Louisiana State. And so that was going to be a tall task to pull him out of, but Texas made a great impression on him and he was fired up that he made the trip. They pencil, they see him as a defensive end and a really good fit along what Bo Davis and those guys want to do. And so overall, I think it was a great little buzz. It was a good atmosphere. You had some of the older commits. BJ Allen came in, brought his little brother Jaden Allen, 2024 cornerback, who will probably be offered, in the next year. So he is going to be that level of athlete. You had Cole Hudson and Connor Robertson, the two, I call them the CNC football factory, 2 guys from different parts of the state of Texas. They came together during an official visit, and now they're long lost brothers. They're basically best friends. 2 really good guys that I can't wait to get to cover and get to know. And so overall, Amari Abor, I can't forget about my man from Duncanville, 5-star defensive end. He was pretty forthcoming with some information. He said that OU hasn't really been in touch with him as much lately. And so he's feigning a little interest there. I know Alabama and Ohio State are probably setting the pace for his recruitment, but Texas isn't quitting. They're not letting up. They realize how important and how valuable this guy can be. This is a guy that you see at defensive end at Ohio State. And what do those guys do usually? They go in the 1st and 2nd round. And so Abor, I feel like, especially with his basketball talent, how that translates, how he bends the edge, I think that's just another a bonus point to get him on campus and to get in front of him. And so, like I said, overall, I think it was a good event. The kids seemed to be really, really happy when they came out. Parents loved the pitch. They got some tour of the south end zone. And I think that really, I asked Vernon Glover, one of the rising cornerbacks from Dickinson for 2023, what stood out? He said that $300 million south end zone. He said, we got to look through that. That thing is going to be spectacular. So the kids loved it. They got to see more of the program. The staff was a little more relaxed. It wasn't like the hustle and bustle in June. It was a little more one-on-one, a little bit more just an ease with the evening. And Terry Black's barbecue hit the spot. I talked to Jordan Matthews, a corner out of Woodlawn in Louisiana, and his dad said the banana pudding at Terry Black's might be why he comes back. And so at the end of the day, I think Texas accomplished what they needed to.
That's awesome. It seems like we had some really talented kids there. And this recruiting cycle has been wild with things changing left and right. If we zoom out, what are the factors influencing Texas recruiting this cycle?
Yeah, if you want to look at it from, like you said, a macro level, so much has happened in the last, I mean, I could say the last 18 months, with COVID, the pandemic, with social injustice. But then you come in with all of the NIL, name, image, and likeness. That's a game changer. And we haven't seen Texas bring that to the forefront yet, so to speak. I know there are some deals being worked right now with some of those players. And so I think some of the more of those things will become public, but NIL has changed the dynamic. And then in only 8 days ago, Texas and OU to the SEC adds a whole other layer. I was asked by a friend, how would this impact, the Texas market, the SEC? And I told him, outside of the national championship with the football team, I don't think there's anything that could have moved the needle any larger than the Horns hooking up with that Southeastern Conference. That's a lifetime decision. It's going to bring so much positivity, and that's just one thing. That's just Chris Del Conte and Jay Hartzell and Kevin Eltife, guys that they have alignment. We got to talk to those guys on Thursday night after the Texas Exit Scholarship Dinner, and CDC said he's never been somewhere where everyone was so aligned. Well, with all that, that's how I think recruiting is the byproduct of that. With all those things that line up, I think that's why this cycle is a little crazy, because Texas has a new coach, and you get that new coach smell pretty early on when he's hired. And then you have a gap between the time he actually gets hired and he actually puts players on the field. And so you have to keep that momentum, sometimes even manufacturing it just to get you to that point. I think that's where we are with recruiting. With Derrick Brown committing today, I think that was a big get. And I think there could be a couple other ones before the season starts. But at the same time, you got Denver Harris that's looking at a September decision. Bryce Anderson says he's going to come in for the University of Louisiana Lafayette game in Austin. So just a lot of juggling, a lot of guys changing their mind. A lot of these kids did not actually get to take visits the traditional way. And so they've almost felt like they've had to cram everything. And like you said, you see kids making all these early decisions. I kind of understand that from a standpoint. If you're not an elite 5-star, you need to get your spot. You really do. But at the same time, if, like with a Jeremy Patton, the linebacker from Tenaha, he's so undecided for the last week. He's changed his mind 3 different times. That tells me, hey, brother, take a step back. Soak it in, because if these guys really want you, they'll continue to recruit you. You can kind of let them separate. But this cycle, we were talking to a couple of friends earlier this morning, it's nuts. It's crazy. At this point, you just make sure that you try to be as consistent as possible. You try to make sure that the staff is building the right relationships, that they're connecting with these guys like a Devon Campbell, a Denver Harris, potentially a Harold Perkins, those types of guys. You want to get those guys in. And so I think the message from Sark and the staff has been consistent. I think NIL can help. I think that needs to be ramped up. And I think playing on the field is ultimately what's going to help sell Sark and the University of Texas. When you got Louisiana first game, number 25 in the country, listen, that's going to be a tough game. You cannot take those guys for granted. I'll go as far as to say Louisiana will be better than Arkansas when they go to Fayetteville the next week. And that's, we're talking about a G5 and an SEC school. But that's how good Billy Napier is, the head coach there. That's how good he has built that program. They've got some real talent there. They got the playmaker on offense and Chris Smith. That's a good team. And so once we get to the field and you start to see this offense, you start to see either Casey Thompson or Hudson Card leading the way. You start to see the defensive guys, the athletes, pinning their ears back and flying to the ball. That's where I think we'll see a little bit more of the shift with recruiting. Kids want to see what you're going to be. And with Sark being in his first season, he can't add that. That's why Jimbo Fisher has an advantage. He's been at A&M for a few years now. He's got a product he can prove to people. Same with Ohio State and Ryan Day, obviously with Alabama and Nick Saban. Sark has to get to that point. And a good opening month of September could do a world of difference for how this recruiting class in 2022 pans out.
You're always a wealth of knowledge, man. Thank you once again for coming by. I always learn a lot.
Hey, I had an absolute blast chatting it up with you today, Texas Homer. Be sure and check us out at InsideTexas.com. Led by our fearless leader, Eric Nalin. We have the absolute best team in the country, from Joe Cook to Ian Boyd to Paul Wadlington to Jerry Hamilton to Bobby Burton to Hudson Standish to Tim Preston to Will Gallagher. Our team rocks. There's not one group I'd rather be with. I love collabing with you on these videos, Texas Homer. You do a tremendous job. Thank you for all you do to help us, and let's rock and roll and get it going.
And that's a wrap on the always impressive Justin Wells. Make sure to go subscribe to Inside Texas at InsideTexas.com and watch some more of my videos here. And as always, hook 'em.